Hey everyone, today you're going to learn a lot about poetry because that's what we're starting here. We're starting a whole unit on poetry and there is lots to learn, but we're going to take it just a piece at a time. So today is going to seem really overwhelming, but once we do this over the next 3 weeks, you're really going to start to bring things together. So let's go ahead and get started just by looking at some basic parts of poems. And these are going to look familiar to you. First of all, we have a stanza. Now, in fiction, which we've been reading, in most of our fiction, you know that things are broken into paragraphs. Well, poetry is a little bit different. The paragraphs don't exist anymore. What you're going to see in poetry are stanzas. And that's a division in poetry shown by a line break. And in poetry, a stanza is like a paragraph, only a stanza is made up of lines of poetry. So in a paragraph in fiction, we could find a main idea and supporting details, if you remember, or one paragraph could even support a big main idea. Well, stanzas are going to work a little bit the same, similarly, in poetry. Each stanza may have its own main idea and its own supporting details, or each stanza may contain supporting details that support the big main idea of the poem. So they function kind of similarly. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did ends. I was angry with my foe. I told it not. My wrath did grow. And I watered it in fears, night and morning with my tears, and I sunned it with smiles and with soft deceitful wiles. What you have here is an example of two stanzas. This is a poem with two stanzas, and in the first stanza you see he talks about being angry with his friends and his wrath, what happened with his wrath or anger when he told his friend. Okay, and you also see what happens when he didn't tell someone that he was angry. So when he told his friend, the wrath ended. When he did not tell his foe, the wrath grew. So basically what he's trying to tell you there is when you tell someone it could end, when you don't, it's going to continue to grow. And that wrath that grew down here, he watered it with fears, night and morning with my tears, so meaning that he fed into this anger, and I sunned it with smiles and with soft deceitful wiles. So he never told his friend, he hid it, and he kept feeding this anger. So we saw in the beginning this stanza was set up to tell us a little bit about what happened with the anger he had with his friend, and then of course what happened when he had it with a foe or an enemy, and then he goes on in the next stanza to tell how that grew. So this poem is really about anger and what happens when you don't get that anger out. And you see that each stanza served a different purpose there. So, and we also have a specific type of stanza in poetry, which is super important. Now, there are tons of different types of stanzas. We have ones with 4 lines, like you see here. We have ones with 3 lines, 6 lines. There's a name for all of them. But a really important one is the couplet. You see it a lot, especially in the famous sonnet, which we'll go on to learn as well. And a couplet is a pair of lines that usually rhyme. So anywhere within a poem, it could be a series of couplets. The whole poem could be a series of couplets, 2 lines that usually rhyme, or it could just conclude a poem, 2 lines that usually rhyme. Oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night. So there you go. Your two end words rhyme, and that's a couplet. So again, just wanted to point that out to you because it is so important. You do see so many couplets in poetry. Next, we have the shape of a poem. All poems look different. We know this. All types of fiction looks different. You can have an essay, you can have a story, you can have a novel. Well, it's no different for poetry. And poetry, a poet makes decisions. Just like our author made decisions for fiction, we have a poet making these decisions. And the poet says, I want my poem to look a certain way. It's not just a series of stanzas. It's not just 4 stanzas, 4 stanzas, 4 standards, couplet. It's not how it works. The poet actually says, you know, I want my poem to look a certain way because I think the shape of my poem is going to help the readers to understand the meaning of my poem. So a poet may choose to do a haiku. This is only 3 lines. The first line of a haiku has 5 syllables. The second is 7 syllables. The third is 5 syllables. Now, don't hold people to that because the haiku has gotten a little bit, the haiku rules have gotten a little lenient. So some people don't always stick to that 5-7-5. They may do 6-7-6. So just be careful. It still is a haiku. One of your hints is going to be that it's also about nature. A haiku always deals with some type of nature or awareness of nature. Old dark sleepy pool, a quick unexpected frog goes plop, waters splash. That's a haiku. Not my favorite type of poem. Next, we have free verse, which is quite cool. Poetry without any rhyme, scheme, or rhythm. So these poets like to break the rules. They like to say, I'm just going to write. And they're going to go to the next line, like we see here. The fog comes on little cat feet. That could have all been written on the same line, right? But the poet made a decision. He said, the fog comes, I want to go to my next line on little cat feet. That wasn't an accident. That was done on purpose. Then he starts a whole new stanza here. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches, and then moves on. So there was a reason this poet made these decisions. He did free verse. It does not have rhyme or rhythm. And we're going to learn a little bit about rhythm. We don't find ourselves tapping our feet to that poem. And we don't sound sing-songy when we say it. And there was alliteration for you. And it is free verse. Next, we have a narrative, and I apologize, some of that got cut off down at the bottom there. And a narrative tells a story. Now, this is just like fiction, except it's in the form of poetry. It's in the form of a poem. So here's an example. It was many and many years ago, a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lives whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. That's starting to tell a story. They're going to tell the story of Annabel Lee. And again, I apologize, you can't see the bottom. But you're going to notice that we learn about a place, we have a setting, there's a maiden, so we have a character. So a narrative poem is going to tell a story, just like the fiction that we've been reading. Then we have sonnets. There are a few different types of sonnets, the Petrarchan sonnet, the Shakespearean sonnet. The Shakespearean sonnet is the most popular, and this has a specific shape. It usually has one speaker and expresses a feeling. That's how we know it's a sonnet, and it has 14 lines, always, each of which traditionally has 10 syllables, and we're going to learn about that too. So 14 lines. The Shakespearean sonnet is 3 stanzas of 4 lines each, okay, plus a couplet. So if we have 3 stanzas with 4 lines each, that's 3 times 4, that's 12, plus the couplet is 14 lines, and that's a sonnet. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. Then we have a lyric, is a short poem with one speaker expressing a feeling. Let's take a look at that. I prize thy love more than whole mines of gold or all the riches that the east doth hold. My love is such that rivers cannot quench. And that's a lyric, a very short poem with one speaker expressing a feeling. Now we're going to go over some more poems, not right now because I got to get going through the next slides, but you're going to see there's many, many other forms that a poem can take. But first I want to talk about rhythm and meter. Much like tap, tap, tapping your feet to a sweet tune. That's all rhythm and meter is. Rhythm is the musical quality of language produced by repetition or repeating something. So meter is a generally regular pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. Now you know what that means. When you stress a syllable, you put emphasis on it. When something is unstressed, it's kind of flat. So in poetry or verse, meter is that pattern of up, down that we use that we do with our voices. Syllables are grouped in 2s and 3s to form a foot. So when we see 2 syllables together and they go up, down, that's called a foot. Sometimes, though, it's going to go up, down, and that's also called a foot, but it has 3 syllables in there. So what does that mean? We're going to use lub-dubs to help you to understand this. Now, these could be words in a poem, but we're going to use lub-dub for now. So when we look at this poem, pretend that they're words, and our voice goes lub-dub, so we go down, up, and the poet means for us to do this. It's kind of hard to figure out what the poet wanted you to do, where he wanted the emphasis, but if you just say a poem out loud, a lot of times you just fall into the rhythm without even having to think about it. And you don't have to think about it. You just say, oh, my voice wants to go up, down, like row, row, row your boat. You know that. You want to go down, down, up, down, and you just know it to be true. So don't overthink this. Just let yourself say a poem out loud and see where your voice goes up and down, and that's how you're going to figure out your lub-dubs or your meters in your feet. So when you combine those syllables into groups of 2 and 3 to create meter, each combination is called a foot. So again, the meter is all of these stressed, unstressed. That's the meter. Okay, bump, 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 bump. But how many times that happens in syllables is called the feet. So if we have a total line, now again, don't get yourself frustrated with this because we'll go over it in more detail. If you have a line that looks like this, it has 10 total syllables. See, lub-dub. Let's do this one. You see, lub-dub, and you saw that combination 5 times, so that meant it had 10 syllables in the line. Let's go on to types of meter. Because again, I'm going to go back to feet. I don't want you to stress out about that anyway. Iambic meter is the name of the meter that goes down up, like the word convince. And we call that iambic. Then you have trochaic, and it's the name of the meter that goes up and then down, as in the word borrow. So you see, by nature, we do these things anyway. Then you have anapestic, and that's the name of the meter that goes down, down, up, as in the word contradict. And you say it that way. Say it out loud. Do it right now. Say contradict. Don't you go down, down, up? And dactylic is the opposite, which is up, down, down, as in accurate. Spondaic is the name of the meter, dub, dub, as in the word seaweed. You just stay up on those words for some reason. So if a poem mostly has iambs, where it mostly goes lub, dub, lub, dub, lub, dub throughout the lines, it's called iambic. And that's it. If it mostly goes up, down, as in the word borrow, then that's going to be called trochaic. And that's all there is to it. So have you learned that Shakespeare wrote most of his plays and poems in iambic pentameter? That's very important. So most of Shakespeare's poems were written in an iamb, which means that the rhythm or meter is down, up, down, up, down, up. But what does pentameter mean? Well, you're going to see in there penta, which means 5. We're going back to our root words now. So 5 meter. What do you think that means? That means that Shakespeare wrote most of his poems in iambic pentameter, or that he has per line 5, penta is 5, lub-dubs. That's all that means. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so when we take a look at our number of feet, we want to count the double syllables. Remember, so if we only have 1 foot, that's a manometer. But a dimeter is 2 feet. That means we might have lub-dub, and we have that in every single line. That's called a dimeter. Trimeter is 3, tetrameter is 4, penta is 5 feet, hexameter is 6, heptameter is 7, octameter 8. So something in iambic pentameter has 5 measures of lub-dub. That's all it is. But soft would light through yonder window breaks. So we went down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up 5 times. And that's why it's called pentameter. It's an iamb because it goes down and then up, down, up, down, up, and it does that 5 times. So it's called iambic pentameter. Okay, so again, we're going to go over that in more detail. Just wanted to introduce you to it today. So let's take a look at this in something that you might be familiar with. Maybe the song We Are Siamese, if you please. We all know this. And you can see it here. If you sang this out loud right now, you would find yourself staying up, up, down. Up, up, down. Okay, so try that out loud, everybody. We are Siamese. So you're going up, up, down, and that's all meter is. And poetry is meant to do that as well. Okay, you're doing great. I promise you're doing great. You're doing great. So how does understanding meter help you understand a poem? Well, if the meter is very simple like that in a children's book, that will help you to know the message or theme of the poem is probably humorous. But a complicated meter might indicate a more complicated theme. So you have to pay attention to those things. Just as a poet might change the rhyme scheme for a specific purpose, a change in meter might indicate that the poet is trying to change the topic. So if you go from a specific rhyme scheme or rhythm, rather, into a different rhythm, that should say, or into a different meter, which doesn't happen very often, then unless it's really in drama, then you're going to see that there's going to be that means some type of a transition, something changed. Shakespeare, for example, usually had his noble characters, kings and queens and generals. They spoke in iambic pentameter, but his lower characters, like servants, would speak in regular language. Why? Did that indicate that those generals and kings and queens were maybe a little more advanced than these servants, or demanded a bit more attention? Think about that. Okay? If you're wondering why Shakespeare chose to write in iambs, maybe it's because the iamb is the beat of the heart. Bum, 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 bum. That's iambic. So, lines of poetry are written to create a specific rhythm. They want you to tap your foot. This rhythm is created using a pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables called meter, lub-dub, lub-dub. And how many times that meter occurs is called feet. So the pattern of feet is given a certain name, like iamb, dactyl, trochai, and then you add how many they are. So if you have an iamb, lub-dub, and you have it 5 times, you have iambic pentameter. You're doing great with this, everyone. And again, don't freak out. We're going to do some more. Alliteration, a form of figurative language when a group of words has the same beginning sound, and it's another way to create a little rhythm. Just wanted to point this out to y'all so that you're familiar with it. These are like tongue twisters. So Greg gave Greta grapes from grandma's. You see that repetition of G, 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 G? Okay, that's called alliteration. You're repeating a sound. Sally Sue sang songs to Susie on the seashore. And Peter paid Pedro 5 pesos for the pencils. All of these are a repetition of sound, and it's another way to create a little rhythm, and it's called alliteration. All right, that brings us to rhyme scheme. Relax your ears. You already know what we're about to learn. Just look at end rhymes as we go through here, and you're going to be fine. Few definitions before we begin. We'll review the couplet, which is 2 lines of poetry. You have your quatrain, which is 4 lines. That has a specific rhyme scheme, and we're about to learn about that. You have repetition, or the repeating of words, phrases, or sounds, and rhyme. Some things are without rhyme, other things have specifically end rhyme, and again, here's a couplet. I don't think I will ever see a sight as lovely as a tree. And that's what we're going to be focusing on right now. We're going to be focusing on rhyme. So here's a poem by Robert Frost called Runaway. So once when the snow of the year was beginning to fall, you heard my voice go up and down, up and down, up and down. So we know this has a rhythm. All poems do. Well, most poems do, not free verse. We stopped by a mountain pasture to say, who's cold? So as you go through this, what you want to look at when you're looking for rhyme scheme is the last line, the last word of each rhyme, of each line rather. Why? Because the last line of each, the last word of each line is going to tell you your rhyme scheme. How did the author set this up to rhyme? Well, fall, that's the first word, first line, so it always gets an A. Colt gets a B because it doesn't rhyme with fall, so it gets the next letter of the alphabet. Wall rhymes with fall, gets another A. Head, that doesn't rhyme with anything so far, so give it the next letter in the alphabet, a C. Bolt rhymes with colt, give it a B. And fled rhymes with head, give it a C. And what do we wind up with? If somebody said, what's the rhyme scheme of this poem? You would say A, B, A, C, B, C, which means A rhymes with A, B rhymes with B, C rhymes with C. So the rhyme scheme is A, B, A, C, B, C. Okay? And again, something else that we will continue to go over. Just want you to kind of get your feet wet. So understanding rhyme scheme, let's take another quick look. C, power, plea, flower. Well, we don't always have to just use, you would need crayons at the Keystones if you needed to do this. So what we're going to do instead is continue to do what we did at the beginning, on the other slide. What we're going to do is we're going to present rhyme scheme as letters of the alphabet. Okay, so even though this is a great way to do it, I love color coding, you want to do it as the alphabet. So C, power, plea, flower means A, B, A, B. Out is a whole new rhyme. So you go C, days is a new rhyme, D, C, D. And you just continue that throughout the poem. Alack, hid, back, forbid. They would get alack and back the same letters, hid and forbid. And here's your couplet, might and bright. Okay, so here's what it looks like. Just give them the letters of the alphabet, and if somebody says to you, what is the rhyme scheme of this poem, and is it regular or irregular, you would give them the rhyme scheme after you mapped it out, okay? And you would say that it's regular because that's typical. The first and third lines rhyme in each of these stanzas, and you'll see there are 4 stanzas, A, B, A, B. Those 4 lines are a stanza. C, D, C, D, that's a whole nother stanza, okay? Now, finally, all of these Shakespeare sonnets follow the same form, so you're never going to see anything different. But when you do see something different, just understand that it's not a sonnet. All right, so now you understand form, rhythm, and rhyme scheme. You have just a general understanding, which is all you needed right now to go ahead and take your quiz. So go get quizzical. And again, if you don't do well, that's okay. This is something we're going to be going over for the next 3 weeks. So good luck, everybody, and I'll see you in class.